Every day, local government makes modern life possible. Water flows, roads are repaired, parks and playgrounds open and come to life. And behind each one of those services is a story of people who show up, care deeply, and lead with purpose, even when no one is watching. This is the HaltingWinter Podcast, and it's part of the HaltingWinter Project, a movement to restore pride, purpose, and participation in local government by sharing the stories that build belonging. I'm Seth Winterhalter, and every week I tell the stories that remind America where government really lives, locally, in our cities, our counties, and our communities. Before we hear today's conversation, I want to thank our founding sponsor, Tyler Technologies, a company that's been exclusively serving the public sector since 1998. From smarter budgeting to stronger resilience, Tyler Tech equips local governments with software and solutions that help leaders serve with clarity, efficiency, and impact. You can explore practical resources and hear the real success stories from communities across the country at tylertech.com/winter. That's tylertech.com/winter. Tyler Technologies, empowering the public sector to build stronger, more connected communities. Now, let's turn to today's conversation. Well, today is a special day on the podcast. Today, we're catching up with David Cameron, who was the first full-length interview of a local government leader here on the HaltingWinter Podcast over a year again. Back then in the good old days, David was the city administrator in Republic, Missouri, but has recently become the city manager in Springfield, Missouri, the old stomping grounds of my undergrad college days. So I'm looking forward to catching up and hearing about what's going on in that unique city. David's amazing story was featured on episode 107. We're going to play that for you in just a minute. But first, David, it is great to connect.
Yeah, it's great catching up with you as always.
Man, I was really encouraged the other day. I saw a video that you were a part of. I think it was called, it's a part of this Borrow My Angel, the Stories of Hope series. And that's one of the things I loved about your episode was just how transparent you were about your personal life and the reality of this professional role has a weight to it. It has a reality that I think can go under the radar. People don't understand the weight of local government. They don't understand all of the work, the toll it can take, trying to manage what do I call the three-headed snake of electeds, of staff, of community residents. And so it was cool to see that video. I'm going to link to it in the show notes. But tell us about that project and why you're so passionate about telling your story and about hopefully shining the spotlight on a needed area.
Seth, as always, I'm always excited to talk about the transparent pieces of my life because a lot of times what gets highlighted in your work is what you've accomplished. And sometimes you're like, but are you really getting to see who I really am? Because I feel like my accomplishments hide that. And so you can overlook is everything okay? You got the world by the tail. You've had all these accomplishments. You're going from Republic to a city of 170,000 people to Springfield. And is everything okay? And not every day is okay. But you can still be high functioning and accomplish great things, but still be struggling deep down from within. And so I just use my voice on platforms to talk about mental health and taking time off and sabbaticals and things of that nature and why I do that versus saying, oh, it's a work-life balance thing. It's really about a mental health thing. And the stigma around it, well, it just so happened I was speaking at an event where Chuck Gow, who sister unfortunately committed suicide, and he created a foundation called Borrow My Angel, and he wrote a song called Borrow My Angel. You're just having enough time that, you can loan your angel to somebody and say, hey, I'll sit with you through your pain and your hurt. You're not alone. You're going to be okay. And so he just asked me to open up and tell my story, but I got this was on another level. Now I was going to talk about my battle where I actually had considered and had the thought of suicide. And in the world's eyes, they'd look at it like I had the world by the tail. And being a believer in Christ, it was like you can't tell the church this is what's happening. But if you tell your employers or your employer, they're going to think, wait, you're not even fired. And that's farthest from the truth. But at the same time, culture, we're so protected to create this shield around us that's really not even who we are authentically made to be. And so Chuck just did a story that really showcased the deep down hurt and struggle that I really go into that I was not being able to tell behind the stage because I felt like it could be almost too heavy. So it had to be the right arena in a safe environment. We filmed it over about 4 or 5 hours, and he really just the filmer videographer did such a great job to capture who I really am, and it meant a lot for people to see that's truly who David Cameron is. Yes, all the accomplishments. Yes, all the things that I've been able to do. There's also a lot of hurt inside that you've got to seek help for, and I want people to realize it's okay not to be okay.
It's such a man, such a powerful picture of, like you said, there's the shame. There's the way I talk about this in the keynote I just gave to, I was out in Kansas speaking for their city management association, was up in Alaska speaking for their municipal league on the work-life balance. How it's a lie. It's BS. And I said, the issue is we like that. It can be hidden. The mental health and those deep issues, and not just, again, we can look at like again, depression or alcoholism or whatever it is and think that's the issue, and that's just a sign of the real deep issues at play, right? But we don't talk about them because there's an overwhelming shame of, why I could be fired, I'll be think of less than. And so we don't. And I think it's just so powerful to have community, and that's why I'm so passionate about shining the spotlight on you leaders and putting you together in places where it's safe to actually be you, to start to peel back the onion and to say, hey, this is who I really am. This is where I'm at. It doesn't mean you've got to have some crazy dark story, but the reality is, if you're not taking care of your mental health, you're probably on a trajectory towards that. I think specifically in roles of high-level leadership, because the weight is just so much. I don't think a person can bear it alone in isolation.
No, they can't. And I'll tell you what happens. What I've learned is your body gets deregulated or unregulated, and it gets into a place that you've never seen before. And you think you can come out of that spiral. And you bring up a very valid point. That a friend of mine, David Horsager, wrote the book, The Trust Edge, talks about transparency and vulnerability. I think you got to be very careful about how transparent you are with your story, just to publicly shame yourself, to put yourself on the altar of some sacrifice, because I think that's unhealthy too. I think you're beating yourself up, and I've done that before too. I think you got to be vulnerable to tell your story that I struggle, and there's 3 days you'll have great. One day, like, where did it all go? And it's just such an important part of having community and not trying to do it on your own, because alcohol was not my problem. It is not my problem. It's what causes me to go to alcohol, what causes me to eat too much or spend too much or Facebook too much, binge watch too much, whatever, or work too much. So I just want to draw a fine line, and not even a fine line, a very definitive line. It's okay not to be okay. And if anybody acts like they've got it all together, chances are they don't. But be vulnerable with your story, but also be very protective, that you're not so transparent that you actually shame yourself into an environment that's not really who you are either.
Such a good point. Oh man, we could talk forever on it. I want to be mindful because we got your interview was, I think, a couple hours long. It was so good. It was so great. And I think that's where it was both, again, some really powerful look into the inner workings of the personal life of leadership, but you give some great insights into risk taking. We had a great chat about how, sometimes the problem with local government is it always defaults to that's the way it's always been done. And so that's why there's no forward momentum. And it's why no one really likes to interact with cities. And you did some amazing work at Republic. And now I'm excited to see what you do in Springfield. What is it like? What are you seeing there as now you've been in the seat for a couple months? What are you excited about? What do you think are the challenges ahead for that city?
Well, what I'm really excited about is, like I've talked about, in the last time we were together, is the effectiveness of your team. I have 2,200 employees now, and it's a much larger city, much larger dynamics, but it also has a lot more diversity of things you can work on and tackle that you've never dealt with before. So it allows you to expand your skill set that you're not going to get in a classroom. And so what I'm excited about is just watching what a team can do when they're empowered to think critically, to think that quit being so risk adverse in certain areas and say, quit worrying about losing your job and just do your job. And I'll just say the power of leadership and just speaking life into people. What's been so exciting that I've found is when people are like, listen, I expect you to make decisions in a city manager's office so often. It's like, it's so centralized. And what I'm excited about is decentralized and saying, hey, listen, I'm empowering you to make those decisions. I expect you to make those decisions. And all those what if questions that tend to lead to paranoia. It's okay if you swing and miss. It's okay if you take a shot and you don't hit the basket. The problem that I have is if you don't take a shot after that again. And so I'm excited about the things that we're seeing in Springfield, the momentum that we're seeing. We are the fastest growing region in the state of Missouri, and it's not really even close right now. But we have so much opportunity in this center, as you know, Springfield area. We're kind of the major hub for all the neighboring cities around us, but we need those cities to grow too. And so, being a big fan of regionalism and coming from an immediate adjoining city, and being the voice of being able to connect to the smaller cities that I was once part of and not losing. Don't ever lose sight of where you came from, Seth. And so, and don't ever leave those people in some form of fashion that now I'm better than you, because that's not true either. So I'm excited about bringing my my peers, my teammates in the region around a much larger vision and what we're going to be able to accomplish, not only from an economic perspective, but from a mental health perspective, just an overall collaborative mindset of how we can accomplish some of the most challenging things we're dealing with in government. Because I got to tell you, the level of trust in government, regardless of the level of form of government, from federal, state, county, cities, is probably at an all-time low. And people are worried and concerned. And our job, excuse me, is to make sure we bring some level of stability in our messaging, that we show that we're on the same page working, even when we disagree, to try to get some things done that benefits our community and our residents and does not create a negative impact on them. Some of the more social dynamics we're dealing with in today's society. So I'm extremely excited about where Southwest Missouri is going to go and where we're going to put ourselves in relationship to others in a competitive market.
I love it. I love that point too about a city like Springfield, a major hub, but it has the other cities. You know, we were talking about Nixa, you got Republic, you've got Williard, and so you've got those places that have their own uniqueness to them, and it's good to have that. It's good for the region, but how can they work together? Usually, it's like that. It's kind of like I've had a couple county administrators on who go, it's kind of like the dark side in the county, right? And everyone's kind of cities are fighting for their own thing within it. How do you keep your identity, but also work together? Like you say, economic development. I think of Perry and Brent Burek, and just, man, it's always like they just got some new company moving in. They're just always doing something amazing. And I think Missouri's got a lot going on. It's really cool to watch how you guys are doing economic development and inviting companies and places into your cities.
Yeah, I think it's important for anyone that's listening to understand that economic development does not necessarily choose zip codes. They're looking for the most geographic expedient spot to move their market, to get it to market faster. Who's going to help them accommodate that? And one of the things I like to say when I was in Republic is a win for Republic was a win for Springfield, a win for Nixa or Ozark, and a win for Springfield will be the same with our neighbors adjacent. I think we have to approach it that if there's a new development that comes into, say, Republic or Willard or Stratford or Ozark or Nixa, then we need to be able to celebrate that with them, not go out and try to compete against them. So we have to make sure that we're not coming across as big brother, the bigger city, with all the resources. Make sure we're allocating our resources to help success as well, and make sure we're doing that very transparently, not secretively, so it does not lose trust or erode trust with your neighbors. There's always going to be a little bit of skepticism. What's the big city up to? We're trying to stick it to the little guy. I just want to make sure that we have open and transparent communication with what were my peers before, and they're still my peers today, and just build upon those relationships I've had. I think that's an advantage for me being here for 10 years already, and knowing those players and knowing those communities and having an understanding of who I am as a leader and what we represent as a community is going to be very important for us to continue to build on that success.
I love it. I love, again, back to what you said about just building the team and empowering them, right? It's so interesting, isn't it? How you come into an organization and it can kind of be that mentality of, I'm just doing enough not to get fired. Instead, it's like, we got to flip that. Like, go try to, you're not going to get fired, but it's like, I can't fail because I'll be fired. And it's like, wait a minute, like, failure, yes, ultimate failure is really not to act. That's failure. The failure, go out and try. Like, you're never going to move forward if we're not swinging the bat, right? No one bats 1,000%. So go swing. It's like, we don't even want to get up to bat in case we strike out. So I love that you're resetting the framework there. And what do you think, just to encourage someone before they listen to your original episode, how do you, it's one thing to talk about it. It's one thing to set the framework up for that change. How do you, as the city manager, as the leader in charge, continually day by day, what do you think is the number one thing, the number one insight to give to the audience on how you continue to do that? Because I would imagine it becomes a grind to say over and over and over, this is what it is, or what are some of the ways that you think you're going to do that over the year ahead?
Well, I mean, the one thing about it is I like to quote David Horsager, and he says, if you're not quoting your mission, vision, or statement every 14 days, people are forgetting it. And I like to utilize this example with organizations I go to. They always do a safety meeting before you ever start. Have you ever been to one of those places where we're going to do a safety moment before we ever start? And sometimes they drive me crazy, but you know what the emphasis is? They do repeatedly over and over. They have that safety moment. If you're not repeating what your expectations are of your employees, the greatest priority and gift you can give them. Reason why my children did not have a lot of trouble in high school and came home on time is I set an expectation. Home at 11:30 on the weekends, and there was repercussions if they weren't. But there was also a reward when they did, and they understood. It's just like it is in an organization. When people don't know what's expected of them, they're going to go into survival mode. And so when you create a boundary and a space, free to fly, free to take things head on, tackle the toughest issues in the room. Covey even teaches us the big rocks and the little rocks. Take on that biggest rock and don't let fear get in your way. Take that sucker head on. You got to be willing as a leader to take those things on in front of your team too. Don't duck while the big rocks fly and your staff take a beating while you take the little ones. You grab the biggest bully in the room and you go after it.
I love it. I love it. So good. And I think it just, again, to reemphasize that the curse of knowledge is thinking, well, everyone knows, I've said it. And it's like, you haven't said it enough, right? It's the key of vision casting. Until you want to throw up in your mouth because you've said it so many stinking times, you have not said it enough yet. So
yeah, my staff are tired both in Republic and Springfield already. When I preach process, relationship, trust, get to know those three words more than any other words you know. It's either a process-related issue, a relationship-related issue, or they just don't trust you. We got to rebuild it. So one of those three things that we got to work on.
There it is. Simple. Well, here we go. We're going to flip it over to your episode. It is filled with inspiration and insights, just like this short reconnection. Here it is, episode 107 with David Cameron, leading with authenticity. Here it is, episode 107 with David Cameron, leading with authenticity. You know, we're living through one of the biggest shifts local government has ever seen. Not political, not cultural, it's digital. AI, automation, cybersecurity, cloud migration, none of this used to be part of your job description. But now it's the choppy water every city and county is swimming in. And for many leaders, it feels less like innovation and more like what's going to break next, and will we survive it? Here's the truth most people won't say out loud. A lot of governments aren't afraid of the cloud. They're afraid of getting it wrong because the stakes are real. You're trying to protect data, modernize ancient systems, improve service, and keep your residents happy, all while staying under budget and out of the fire. That's why I appreciate the team at Tyler Technologies. They don't talk about the cloud like it's magic pixie dust. They break it down. What to migrate, when to migrate, how to get long-term value without blowing your budget or burning out your people. They've helped more local governments make this transition than anyone I know, and they've put all their best insights into a new ebook about cloud adoption and strategy. If you're trying to lead your organization into the future instead of getting dragged there, you got to check this out. Their newest guide is called Modern Governments Live in the Cloud, and you can download it for free at tylertech.com/winter. That's tylertech.com/winter, WINTER. tylertech.com/winter. Go check it out. Download the free guide. Now, back to the conversation. Well, welcome to the HaltingWinter Podcast, where we're dedicated to building stronger cities through stronger leaders. I'm your host, Seth Winterhalter. Today, we're joined by David Cameron, City Administrator of Republic, Missouri. Very eager to dive in and explore the really innovative work you've been spearheading in the City of Republic, specifically your creative approach to engaging businesses, streamlining the municipal process. Really, it's refreshing, as we've talked before, to see a municipality breaking away from the stereotypical red tape culture that often hinders the progress of local government. But before we dive into that and these exciting developments, let's rewind. Let's start at the beginning of your journey so we get a little picture of who you are. So, David, give us a picture of where you grew up. Give us maybe a few snapshots from childhood that were significant milestones and really shaping the person you are today.
Yeah, great. It's great to be here. I grew up in a little small rural town in Southwest Missouri, had 695 people. I graduated with a class of, I believe, 52. Raised by a single mom who made one income. Money was tight. I wouldn't say that we were completely poor, but it was tough going. And so I started working at a fairly early age to help pay the bills in my household. And so I learned leadership and responsibility at an early age. But being in a small, tight-knit community, you also helped your neighbor without payment. So being a servant was just kind of my heart, seeing elderly people like across the street, helping them. But I didn't put a lot of focus on education. It was like taking care of my family. And so by the time it was time to graduate high school, I was on a little bit of the struggle bus as to what I was supposed to do. And so I went to a little tech school and got a water wastewater education and got an associate's degree on how to treat water, find a technical trade. And that's when I learned and became introduced to municipal government. So when you learn how to treat water, you don't realize you're working for a municipal government when you do it. So there's no class in college or technical school on a mayor, city council, let alone a city administrator. So my path to city administration, I didn't even know there was such a job. I always knew there was a mayor and elected officials, but I had no idea how much they could impact your technical skill by, putting $50 in a hat and putting their name on the ballot. So that's really what shaped my world. Was I really started off with just a small piece of paper. And because treating water is an individual sport, kind of like golf, once I progressed in that profession and advanced, I quickly moved up, getting all my certificates in water and wastewater, the highest ranking levels you could get in Missouri. From there, it started opening the door to supervising people and running my own facilities. Well, I had never been trained to deal with another person. It was like, do as I, kind of just emulate me. Well, I didn't have the skills. So I went back to college again. And by there, I'd gotten pretty frustrated with local government because if you wanted to order pumps or buy equipment, it was always going to be superseded by Christmas lights or things that, you're going to have a fancy ribbon cutting for. But wastewater plants, very rarely do you see people show up to celebrate a new sewer line. And so, but those are the fundamental inner workings of government that deliver service every day. So I went to learn how to navigate both the administrative side and the technical side, and learning to become part political and navigating the way a political mind thinks, but also at the same time knowing the technical skill and bridging the gap between those two from a business mindset really set my path in order. Without my water wastewater education, I would not be nearly as effective as I am today, because I can relate to the employee that's in the ditch, but I can also relate to the politician that's in Washington, D.C. I know I can speak both languages.
And that's really unique that you've hit on something that, as I talk to municipal leaders all over the country, it's one of my big passions that's led me to focus on this niche. Is we're doing such instrumental work. If somebody's sewer didn't work for a day, all the town would know about it. It's the essential work, but no one's throwing parades for it. And so, like you say, we tend to allocate money to the ribbon cutting, to the things that, yes, we still want to do this, we still want to celebrate, but man, these are essential services that we've got to invest in. We got to make sure work right, and we have to make, and a lot of citizens don't, because we're so just entitled to it. It's just so common. We don't think about really the cost of all it takes to run the infrastructure of a city.
Absolutely not. And I'll say this just because this is where I stand with it. Wastewater plants, water, and streets do not win elections. New parks, new things that are amenities that people want in their community that are, you can see, touch, taste, and smell. It's beautiful. You love those events, and I love them too. But at the same time, if your sewer system's failing or your water system's failing, to your point, they're going to say, why didn't you plan for it? Well, no one wants to pay a higher rate. So a lot of times in administration, we make decisions to self-preserve to keep our job because we know that, hey, keep the rates low. Don't make those people that situation bad. But we kind of kick the infrastructure can down the road. and then we have to pay for it later. And someone's got to come along and be the leader to decide that. And I feel like that's where I come in my capacity to help in those. That's what I love to do the most, probably.
Yeah. Okay, so we're going to jump into that. Let's rewind just a touch. So here you are, you're kind of a solo wastewater guy doing the thing. All of a sudden you're getting put into leadership. Now I got to figure out how to lead people. When was the moment when, and you're engaging in government, you're kind of seeing the good, the bad, the ugly. When was the moment where you go, okay, this city administrator position, this leadership position, when did you make the jump? When was there maybe it was a mind jump before it was even a physical jump? When did that happen to that position specifically?
That's a great question. So I can tell you it was October 2004. The mayor of the city came down, and to your point, I'd gone from running the wastewater plant. They asked me to become the water wastewater director. And then they asked me to be to take over the street, the air, and they just started encompassing all these departments because I began to learn how to lead and love people and connect with my team and let them be empowered. And I just started realizing I was building a city within the city itself. Well, then whenever the city administrator was transitioning out, the mayor came down, said the city council it was called the board of directors there, would like you to be the interim. And I said, absolutely not. I was like, I'm in my wheelhouse. I mean, I've got momentum, and I mean, I'm at the top of my game. Why would I want to take on that bureaucracy? But what's is interesting about that, Seth, is because sometimes in our own head, we tell ourselves we're not good enough at the people around us. And so my two kind of lieutenants that were on my public works staff, they came to me and said, David, if not you, then who? And I'm like, well, why would I want to do that? I'm risking my career. I was like, I'm a water, wastewater infrastructure guy. Why would I want to jump into wearing a suit and tie? And I said, I look better in steel toe boots than I do looking at the main office. And really what I did is I said, okay, I'll do it as the interim basis. And 4 months into it, I was like, I can do this, but I got to do it my way. I'm not going to wear a tie. I'm going to be David Cameron. I'm not going to be what the stereotypical, what they think I should be. And I actually caught some grief going, David, you should wear a tie to the city council meeting. I'm like, well, then that's not me. And if the job requires a tie, you don't, it's like, how's that going to make me any smarter? I understand there's a decorum, but I still had to be that little bit of that edgy David. Like, if I'm going to do it, it's going to be the wastewater David. I came from small beginnings. I started a wastewater plant. And like I always tell people, I don't think the wastewater plant in City Hall smelled that much difference.
I love it. I love it. Well, and that's probably, I'm sure there are many people listening to this who have struggled with that because in any position of politics, there's always the balance of public perception. As human nature anyway, we live with so many assumptions, right? We're assuming what people think about us. And probably the worst place for that to impact us is the political realm of government work, where citizens and as well as our staff and team, all these things weigh in to influence how we make decisions. And so how much healthier would we be personally, but probably our work professionally would have more success if we would just lean more on the side of being who we are wired to be.
Absolutely. Well, I think there's two things in that statement that's absolutely accurate. One, the local government is the closest government to the people. So whatever they see on Fox News or CNN, they're going to translate that that's happening at their local government too, whether it is or it's not. And so you chasing around other people's ideologies or what their political bias may be, you have to consider you're fighting a battle to some extent that's not even yours to fight. So don't try to do that. But early into this administrative career, I was about 18, almost 24 months into it, 31 years old, not a clue. But I'd kind of lost my way a little bit because I was trying to be everything to everybody. I was trying to be CNN and Fox. I was trying to be political and technical. And I mean, I was just like, I've lost my identity. I don't know who I am anymore. I'm kind of like a chameleon. I could just blend in with the crowd. I'm like, who is David? So basically, I just sat down and wrote down 5 words about being progressive, go the extra mile, be about people, have fun, and be honest. And then I wrote an explanation around it. And I handed that to my staff. I said, if I'm going down in flames being this guy. And from that day, I'm telling you, my career has absolutely just flourished because I'm not saying I don't have bad days and I haven't had struggles, because that would be a complete fabrication. But I've fallen forward just through each time getting back up through adversity, going, I'm going to get better and better at being my authentic self as a leader. And I think that's why people follow it. I'm not perfect. And I'll tell you, I'm not perfect. but I'm not going to let somebody else stand up and tell me they are.
Well, and that's the thing too, especially in government type work with those political pressures. This was the big podcast we just did, the 5-part series on the municipal tightrope of balancing. And if you're always trying to figure out what people assume and what side they're on and trying to pitch yourself, no one really knows who you are. So especially as a leader, how can people trust you? That you're a sail that's going to blow along with whatever wind has the biggest gust, instead of leading with clarity towards a destination. And I think that's really what people want is clarity. They want to know where you're going, and they might not even agree with it in totality, but strong leadership towards a particular area, especially when that has with cities. We all want our cities to flourish. I don't think there's one city administrator or manager across America that hopes their city fails. And so if we just present a clear-cut vision and road towards that, I think we're in a much better place. Like you say, being honest for ourselves, than of trying to figure out what everyone wants. And then that leads us really towards stagnation. We'll never accomplish anything.
Well, and I think to your point, one of my favorite quotes comes out of David Horsager's book about clarity. It's the number one pillar. It's called the trust edge. The number one pillar is on clarity. And it says, people trust the clear. This is a quote from David Horsager's book. People trust the clear and distrust the ambiguous or the overly complex. I think it's not only do you have a vision, but we spend so much time writing these strategic plans that sit on shelves that just wear staff out. And Seth, to your point, the other thing about being tossed to and fro as a leader, you've got troops behind you watching their leader, and they're like, you can't get trust and buy-in from them if they're like every single time a council member or a mayor calls you and says, hey, I don't like this, and you just jump and automatically respond or react negatively towards the employee, assuming they're wrong. I've just watched it for so long going, that's one of our own values in our organization, is being insightful. There's two sides to every story. We've heard it since we were kids. We just don't apply it in government at all. We just assume, hey, whatever's going to make the person happy to make that go away, that we don't have any problems. Well, there's just days we've lost the identity of statesmanship and the ability to debate with one another in a civilized manner, that not everything has a perfect answer. Even to your point, I think that employees, like for me, coming from the wastewater plant, being the employee, I will give you my best if I know you're going to get in the line of fire as my leader, and you're going to take on those issues and just not assume I did something wrong. You're going to go to bat for me too. And I think there's a balance of both the employee and the community that you got to weigh that will get you that momentum that you're looking for. And that's what I found. And that's what transitioned me, is I quit being all city, all bottom line, all balance the budget. And I became employee. What do you need to do your job effectively? And that's really the secret sauce. Everybody looks at it as the leader, but I'm like, I just empowered a team that's addicted to go get results now.
I want to dive into the specifics of what you actually have been up to in Republic these last 8 years. I think you've been there now. But before I do, you said something, I think I just wrote about this a couple weeks ago. About strategic plans, that oftentimes cities have strategic plans and mission statements and even core values. But you said you wrote your own 5 core values and said, this is the hill I'm going to die. I'm going to at least be this if I go down. And I've said that most leaders would be more effective if they had their own core values that told them, these are the things that are vital to me. And they're not just, sometimes with core values, they're so non-helpful, right? I'm humble and I'm going to be honest. And it's like, do you need to write that down? Like, is that really going to drive, And maybe it is. Maybe you're not a very honest person, or you struggle with that, people pleasing. So you need to be more honest. You need to be more upfront and confrontational. Maybe just go back to that and just talk about the importance that played in helping you really go, this is who David Cameron is. On this rock I will stand kind of thing as you went forward. And have you gone back to that and updated it? Has that changed over the years?
No, it's the same document. It reads the exact same. I wrote it in 2006. I'll never forget why I wrote it, because I'm like, I'm not going to be an administrator another day being this David. I'm going to go be this one. But I needed to tell my staff, and I had to give it to the elected body too. And so to your point, Seth, honesty is ambiguous to me. It's like when people say we need affordable housing. Define affordable housing to me. So it's like I took away the ambiguity of each word. So what does having fun in the job mean? What does being aggressively progressive? What does it mean to be honest and go the extra mile? So I put definition to, like, okay, being honest for me is I will live and lead in freedom. I will challenge the status quo. I will go the extra mile. I will not let fear dictate my direction. And I just started putting real meaning and real examples of the job. And I was explaining to my elected body and my staff, this is where I've let fear get in the way. This is where I've let influence of the outside, and I'm done. I'm going to just go, like, if you don't like what I'm going to say, I'm just going to tell you that why hire an engineer or a wastewater operator that's going to tell you they need a new pump and you're going to tell them they don't. And so I just started becoming like, let's allow the professional to be professional. And when I did that, I felt like I got my life back. I was like, okay, yes, council member A, I'll take care of that for you. Okay, staff member. And I was just like constantly shifting, trying to make everybody happy. And I started saying, what is the trajectory that we need to go? But what happens when you do that, you're going to make enemies because they no longer have the keys to your office, and they're used to just walking in and sitting down. When you create boundaries in your life, people don't like it because they think there's an entitlement that comes with it. But once I got my life back in that capacity, it's like, hey, if I go down, I'm going to go down with gusto. And I can go back to running the wastewater plant, but I knew I was called to be a leader. I knew I was called to lead. I mean, I'm in the perfect spot, but I'm telling you what, you're going to draw a lot of fire at yourself when you do the job, to do it, not to keep it.
Let's dive into what you've been up to in Republic. Give us kind of a scene when you came in 8 years ago and what you've been up to really bring the flourishing is experienced up to now.
What was interesting about Republic when I came in, it was 2016. So I boomeranged. So I was in Northwest Arkansas for 16 years, which is where I really, in the land of Walmart, JB Hunt, Tyson Foods. So I kind of learned regionalism and in the administration world in a very fast growing region. It's the third fastest growing MSA in the nation at that time. So it was very fast paced. But the chance to get to come back to work in the area where I grew up, I mean, I'm working now 27 miles where I grew up, right next to Springfield, Missouri, adjacent to it. So I'm a smaller city adjacent to a larger city. And really, when I got here, the development community and the community itself, what you would hear was, I'll never develop in Republic again. It's too hard. And it's not anything that I haven't necessarily, Seth, experienced in the room as an employee, where we made it hard when I was, cutting my teeth in this world, in the development world. And so I've seen departments and I've seen employees where when a developer comes in, where you're like, let's just make it, you got to go through 13 levels of review. You got the fire chief, the fire marshal, the planner, the engineer, public works, water, sewer, electric. I just watched them all say, okay, you're waiting for my approval from all 11. And I said, we got to get this narrowed down to one person that's making the decision and communicating with them, and we had to make some serious financial decisions and adjustments. The city was in some struggle and distress I was not completely aware of. But I will just say, once we created around a mission statement, I make it very simple. We're about three things: process improvement. We're going to improve our processes. We're going to make it easier. So the average length of time to get a permit was taking about 4 to 5 months. We did the Amazon fulfillment center in 6 days. And we just began to change what required city council approval and turned it into administrative approvals. But we built that trust with the elected body. But what we had to do is actually take this new mission statement that says we're going to about three things: process, relationships, and trust. I didn't finish what I was saying earlier. Then we just took Republic, made the acronym out of it: regional, ethical, professional, urgent, bold, leaders, insightful, and caring. Then there's a definition behind all of that. Then I took that document to the elected body and I asked them to ratify it. I said, we're not going to have a big strategic plan. This is the new job description for the city of Republic. And we're going to give this to the development community. We will be urgent. We'll be bold. We'll go the extra mile. We'll remove the red tape. We put that in writing and committed to it. And the elected body committed to saying, David, we're going to follow your lead. And they let me do it. And so when you look at it, I mean, we had the Amazon Fulfillment Center, the Convoy of Hope, which is a massive nonprofit organization and one of the top 10, I believe, in the world that does disaster relief. I mean, we've done almost 2.5 million square feet. I think it was over 3,000 jobs, and our revenue on our sales tax without increases doubled. And so we had somewhere around 50 to 60 housing permits going on, where I think the last one I counted was 2,200. We are the fastest growing region in the state of Missouri. The region itself is, and Republic is a huge part of it. But I would tell you, Seth, everybody looks at the result, but it was the fundamental processes that we made it so much easier to get through it. Yeah. That money follows trust. If I trust that I spend $100,000 in engineering to get my development done, it's going to get approved. And in government, what people are doing now is they're spending all their money hoping that it'll get approved through planning and zoning of the city council. And they they burnt their money. And so the investor for us now, the money follows trust. And I just say that one of our calling cards is that one of my favorite projects we've ever done, a lot of them, there's a lot of projects I'm happy with, but we issue grading permits before we ever have final design. So just because the old traditional way says, well, you got to have all this approved, it's on the architect or engineer to meet their requirements because they're state certified. Why hold them up on a grading permit when they can start turning dirt when the weather's good versus holding it up for another 6 months because we got to get where the bathroom light switch has got to be right. We've just really eliminated that. And the other piece of it that we've done, Seth, is we've partnered on public-private partnerships. The city owns its backhoes, its employees, its equipment. We leverage that equipment and those people to actually help install the infrastructure to these sites to help offset some of the cost of the site development because we stand to profit off the property tax or the sales tax. And a lot of times we're making the developer bear all the cost, take all the time, and we're going to get all the revenue from it. So I think it's just it's a way to partner with the development community versus making it's not us against them.
Yeah, I love that. I want to go back and hit on a few things that you've said here first.
Sorry.
No, I love it. I love that I think anyone listening, you just heard mission statement. You heard it broken down and then applied. And that's what I love about it. I do a lot of mission statement work. And the problem is I usually have to come in and tell people how bad their mission statements are because they're horrible. They're very pie in the sky. Again, it's like we talked about with core values. They don't really talk about what you're trying to do to make your city better, especially on the day-to-day activity. They're very, we want our city to be flourishing and a place for all people. And it's like, great, have fun trying to be heaven when you're in Republic, Missouri, right? You don't have a beach. You can't be a place for all people. You don't have these, no places like that. And so I think you looked at reality. You looked at both where you were as a city and said, here are our I wish more people create mission statements out of what are the problems? Why aren't we growing? What's holding us back from flourishing? The statement then, like you said, the very first thing, how many people have the guts to say the very first thing on our mission statement is get rid of we need procedures to actually pave the way to our flourishing. That is awesome.
Yes.
Because you saw a problem.
Yeah. When I went and met, I asked the mayor, he asked me what I wanted to do. And I said, I want to meet with the development community and I want to get everybody in a room. And now granted, I want to know the loudest voices. And it was immediate, but it was so predictable. I could go in as a consultant even now to another community and I can pretty much tell you, I'm going to find it's a process related issue or it's a relationship. It's a government us against them mentality. And you've got to foster relationships. You got to go to lunches. You got to listen. I'm not saying you got to agree. You don't got to concede or sell the ranch, but you got to actually care about the customer. It cannot just be, hey, listen, I'm on a pension. I'm here for 30 years. I got 7 years before I step out. What incentive do I have to work faster for this guy? It'll just be the next person. These people actually pay our salaries. These businesses and these citizens, you've got to somewhat listen to what they're saying because that's how you build your economic side. But we were process laden with, we've eliminated more laws than we've created. We had to balance it out. You cannot just make it easy on processes, but then make it hard on relationships or be so easy on relationships. And then the last one was trust. And so I actually had to get it down to your point. I had to get it into 3 words that my employees, that they could repeat. So I actually gave tests on it and say, what are the 3 words that we're about? And then I wrote it into their job descriptions and their performance reviews, and they got their raises based upon what processes they did and what relationships, not on written communication, oral competency, math skills. I took their job description and said, forget that. If you'll improve a process for me, here comes your 3%. That's how we did it here. I'm telling you, incentivize me to follow the mission statement.
Exactly. And that's what I said. I just got done on a coaching call yesterday with this exact same thing that, you say, here's the things that you're struggling with, and they may be loosely in your values, but they're not clarified. You're not teaching on it and speaking on it. And you got to be the pulpit preacher and be talking about these things. And then, like you just said, they've got to be rewarded on it. This is where praise and performance. And if you have people that are against these values, that's how you got to get them off your ship, because they're going to bring you down and change your values.
I think you just hit a nail on the head too. We call it the onion patch. We don't do workarounds here. So basically I've used this expression. We make Cadillacs here. We don't make Ford. We don't make a Ford. We don't, and nothing against those vehicles, but I'm like, but if you want to make that type of vehicle, there's another organization that makes that type of vehicle. It's just not going to be us. So you can bring that mentality into our organization, but this is how we operate. This is the culture by which we operate. And we have a good time doing it too, because I make it all about the outcome, but I actually genuinely care about my employee. I care about the well-being of that person. And they know that for the most part, there's always going to be those ones that are like, he asked me to leave, but it was for the best interest of the organization too. And so you got to create a culture and you got to stand by it, or otherwise no one will believe you. Because if you'll let if you'll work around them because they're related to the mayor, or they say, hey, I went to high school with a council member and they've got power that way, you've just neutralized your ability as a leader, because they know that you're, whatever that person says, you're going to react to. So it's very important, at least in local government. And it's not always going to work out perfectly, but you got to address those situations. And I had to do that when I got here. And those were some rough days, because you got some very difficult conversations with elected officials that are difficult.
When David Cameron isn't dreaming about new businesses, bringing new business into Republic, when you're not dreaming about new infrastructure projects, what is David doing in his free time? What do you do to relax, to rewind, to refresh in a job that can be very demanding, that can easily encompass all of life?
Yeah, so I'm an avid golfer. I love the competitive nature of playing golf. At a competitive level, it allows me to get away. I have a boat, so I go bass fishing. There's a lot of bass lakes in the area, and so I get to do that. But the one thing that I do for myself every year, which is kind of rare, but it's something that I started here, and I've actually worked with other organizations and consulting myself, is I actually take 4 weeks a year, consecutive days away from the job with no access to the city and no access to email or phone. So I make myself at least once a year take that 4-week sabbatical, if you will, and I allow other people to run the city in my absence. And that's pretty much what I do to make sure I stay recharged and refocused. Play golf, fish, and really, I just don't take life too serious. I make sure that I've got a space. And I'll tell you something else. It's one of the greatest things I ever did was hiring a coach and actually hiring a counselor and having people that I could walk through life. Because one thing that I can tell you, even my own journey, is growing up with a single mom, whether I knew it or not, I grew up with a lot of trauma and mental health challenges that drive me who I am today, but also drive some really bad habits that I had, like of how to unwind and how to relax, because since as a little boy, I was triggered to take care of my mom. Making sure that I make time for myself and love myself well. I've had to work very hard, but I've worked with professionals to do that with coaches and counselors. And I think everybody should have a coach or a counselor in their life, whether it be a friend or someone that you can go to, because it's very important that you find time away, because the leaders will isolate, and that's when it gets dangerous.
When you're talking about, your mental health, when you're talking about being refreshed and rejuvenated, what led you to those decisions?
Well, I think the thing that led me to the decisions and making sure I take care of myself was that my last job, I was extremely successful as an administrator, but I just hit complete burnout. There was, even being who I was, it was like, I've let this job consume me, and I needed to figure out a way that I could do the job without just losing complete sight of David. So after being with that city for 16 years, I kind of stepped away. But I promised myself, if I go back into doing this again, there are going to be terms and conditions for myself. Again, even though I have my own values, you've still got to create boundaries for yourself. Because like I said, growing up in a single family home, and being in a place where you took care of the family, I've been in that capacity, always kind of struggling to take care of it for a long time. And so making myself slow down is not normal. So having a coach and a counselor walk me through that is very important. You don't have to have the answer, but some of the things that drive you to the success that you have also can drive you to some very, very dark spots. I've battled through alcoholism. I battled through struggles to just cope with just the pressure of it all. Even though, like I said, the outcomes sound great, but there's still collateral damage that you got to work with people and be honest about where you're at. So I just know that I have to unplug from the job. So every year I take the middle of June through July off with no access to phone or email. And there are people like, well, I couldn't do that, or that's impossible. I have to do that because I know my own trauma, my own struggle, and I'm not embarrassed by it. I'm just like, I have to disconnect and find a place where is everything all right with me, because the job can mask a lot of pain.
Yeah.
You can be so effective and so involved in it. You're like, but if I stop doing my job, then I got to deal with what I'm struggling with. So that's how I kind of make sure I check in with myself routinely. But also, Seth, to that point, my chief of staff is encouraged. She goes into my calendar without me knowing, and she'll place in there days it'll just say mental health day, you're out. I'm like, what is this day for? It's like, it's just to be away. So I've charged my staff with making sure that in my calendar. They don't let it get occupied in advance. And so there's just days that I get to check out. And when I do, I turn off my email and my phone, and I turn it over to my staff. And that's hard to do, but that's how so I can go golfing and fishing, and I'm not out there checking my phone every 15 minutes.
I love that you have allowed someone the access to be proactive for you, because oftentimes effective leaders love leading, and really effective leaders actually love serving. And so it's hard for us not to be functional saviors to everything. And so we will often, like you say, well, I'll get to it. But you have someone going in, checking and going, well, you haven't gotten to it, so I'm going to make you get to it. And part of that too is we hit the wall and then we're like, now I need rest. And we got to figure out how to do that better, especially in leadership roles, because not only for our health and our effectiveness, people look to us. We wonder sometimes why the cultures of our organizations are so burnt out. The problem is leaders have another gear usually they can operate at, where they thrive on that leadership. They thrive on that workload. And that's not the reality of a lot of normal people. And they can't. And they'll go, well, I'm going to get fired because this is what the boss is showing us we got to do, right? Your words aren't as powerful as what people see. I love that you're having someone be able to help you in that.
I think, to your point, you're driven by making the decision. Being decisive is something you want to be the one that has to take the last second shot, whether you make it or you miss it, because you know you can handle the results if you make it. You can handle the criticisms if you don't. But sometimes it's okay to be on the bench when the game ends. I've learned it's okay to watch other people take the wheel and play for my own sanity, for my own self-help. But I'm also showing that whenever I'm doing this, I'm expecting it from you. And because I'll say this, and I'll leave this point, but I'm really big about this issue. When I was young in leadership, I remember going to my administrator one time and saying, hey, my wife just had her third child. I was like, there's something not right. I need to go check on her. And his first response to me is, well, what time will you be back? There was nothing that suggested, hey, take the time you need, go care for what matters to you. It was all about the organization. And I'm like, and it kind of like, wait, I just heard him say I need to be back today, and she may need to be gone for 3 days. So when I put in a request to be gone for a week, he goes, I've never taken a week off in 27 years. And I'm like, so I've just made it my life's mission and my life's work now to say, yes, every year I take 4 weeks off. I'm proud of it. But then I go emulate it. But I want to say, prove me wrong. Why is that unhealthy for you? Yep. And so I've kind of just taken it like, I'm grateful that that happened to me that day, because now I'm just like, hey, if you need the time off, don't ask me for it. I expect you to already be gone.
Love it. So good. So in light of that, what are the insights? What are some key insights you would pass down to younger men and women who are thinking about one day becoming a city administrator, city manager? What should they be studying? What skills should they be developing?
Yeah, I think that what I would tell people is that, the idea, and this is nothing against academia, it's nothing against being a credentialed manager. I have nothing against any of those attributes, but I took no path to that. And what's, difficult is when I see some of these jobs that post, even though I'm not looking, they come across our desks every day. It says ICMA credentialed manager preferred. And I'm like, okay, well, that automatically, you have to have these pieces. I'm like, you're missing out on some great talent because of a qualification that I'm not sure you can explain to me how it would actually make me. I'm not saying it doesn't make me better, but I'm not sure how that would have made Republic better if I would have had that credential behind me. Nothing against it, but I'm just like, I didn't get there that way. So it doesn't mean that should be a preferred method of how you make a selection. That'd be one. So if you see that out there, don't give up and say, well, I've got to go this path, because not all those programs that's actually prepare you for being an actual manager. Get yourself in an organization, skill set, just find yourself in it. And the thing that I would tell you about public administration, what makes me stronger in that capacity is coming from it. I learned HR. I learned finance. I learned how to deal with, human or HR law. That's a big one that you should study up on, but business law, or municipal law. And so because I could talk the language, I no longer needed HR directors to tell me how to hire someone. I no longer needed the attorney to say, make sure you have this in your RFQ or your RFP. I learned to write documents that made me faster instead of waiting for their approval. And that's the other thing about government that I would love to touch on at some point, is the bureaucracy within the government that slows down the employee too. So when you're trying to hire an employee and HR is like, well, we got, nothing against those people. They had a job, but they're going to remind you of all the laws that you got to go through. And like, I just need bodies, or I just want to buy 1,000 foot of pipe. Well, there's a procurement law. And I just learned how to navigate around those processes inside the organization. And that's what I would tell a young leader that's wanting to come up. Learn everything you can. My stepdad who raised me said, don't ever get beat over a piece of paper. Get CPR training, first aid training, whatever if you could get a certificate behind your name that you could put on a resume that makes you more marketable. But I'll tell you, the other thing is, in the world we look at, I'm looking at stability. How many times is someone moving around and jumping from place to place trying to find the perfect spot? And I know it's changed a lot, but I would tell anybody, if you're looking to get into it, there are other paths other than just academia alone. And don't get so married to the policy side of administration that you forget that there is still a relational, common sense approach. And I would also say one other step to that. I spent 1 year in supply chain, 1 year working for a company that manufactured furniture. Seeing the private side elevated my game for when I went from city administration, I went to that, and learning Six Sigma, learning lean, learning current state, future state, and applying that. I would say that any of those capacities will prepare you for being a city administrator, but nothing, I don't know many classes that will prepare you for having to have the people skills to listen to people and be a statesman or a statesperson in debate. Either that's something you have got to be able to concede your way, but once you have your fundamentals and your values, you have to stick to them. If I was going to say, you can have all the academia and skills you want, but if you don't know who you are as a leader, it will get shaped for you. And that's a very dangerous place to be. So be committed to who you really are, your gifts and talents, and the Lord will take care of the rest. That's what I tell somebody.
I love it. I'm going to have you on again sometime. And I want to talk about this idea because I just had this conversation with a client the other day. They said, I feel like I need to start studying, thinking about business, because this person has been in government their whole life, been in the public sector, never been in the private sector. And they go, but there's some things I feel like are roadblocks for us that are holding us back because we're not operating efficiently, that we're operating again too politically, to kind of in this realm. I'm going to have you on again, and we can talk about what are the things that you've seen in business, or now, because you've been so proactive to get into the business community and invite them in to get rid of red tape and process so things can actually thrive and build. What are some of those things? But also, I think we still want to be mindful that a city can't entirely be like a business, because a business can fail, a city can't fail. And also a business doesn't think 50 years in advance. There is a balance there. I think cities probably can learn, like you're saying, more from the business world, but we also need to rest and go. And we are a unique environment as a municipality. Where do we need to be unique in that reality as well?
Well, but I think that's a great point, and it's probably a completely different discussion, but to your point of planning that far out, what we've done in this year, and I did an about face in 2024, I created a data analytics team. We're getting ready to hire our first data engineer and data scientist in a city. I never even had this data analytics department. And everything is going to be generated by traffic counts. Everything is going to be generated by Placer AI. Where are our resources need to be based upon what the data is telling us, not the emotion? Like, it's going to be this much in 20 years. What is the data and the trending data telling us when we have this event? Where's the most water being used? And where do you see the traffic patterns going based on data? When do you add a code enforcement officer? When do you add police officers? What is the average response time? And so we've actually created a team and allocated a very large appropriation to create something I can't find very many places that are doing it yet in government.
Yeah.
Because a lot of it's just driven by the strategic plans. We're going to actually, it's hard for me to quantify for you, Seth, how you would make money off this team. So I made sacrifices in other parts of the budget to create the data to drive the decisions. And I think that's how, we can't run like a business, but what I learned in the private sector is if you can reduce the amount of time it takes to make the widget, you make more money on the widget. And government's not known for making it faster. They're just used like, that's just how we've always done it. That's what the book says. We follow the book. Well, it's okay to change the book from time to time.
Yes, and yes, right? There's definitely a lot of government books that have a lot of dust on them. And so we're gonna clean them up. I love it. David, it has been is so encouraging to hear your story. And thank you for even sharing, for diving into the realities, right, of mental health, of those challenges, because again, leaders are real people and they struggle. We all struggle. No, we all have real drama and real things to work through. And I think that's where, especially in leadership, the higher you get in leadership, the more fear there is with being honest about the struggles, and the more temptation, like you said, to just invest more into work and to go, I'll deal with that later. And as a leader, you'll have plenty of opportunities to dive into work instead of really handling what's really going on inside. What's going on between my ears? How do I stay healthy? Because when there's a healthy leader, there's going to be a healthy employees. And when there's healthy employees, then you have a city that can actually, I think, flourish. I love that you invest so much into your employees that I think you said that in here, maybe not as direct as you have before with me, that you really think it's about the employees. You invest heavily when you say even a relationship, like even your example. I never want them to have the experience that you had, that moment when you said, I got to go home. And it was like, well, when will you be back?
I treat them the way, to your point, I treat them the way I want to be treated. But I will tell you, what I tell a leader, it's just important to treat yourself that well too. And that's what I've learned, and how I learned to get away from the other coping sides. I'm a very strong, mentally healthy person that I am now. It's like, that's the story I love telling people, is how did I get there?
Yeah.
It's through coaching and shaping that. I love my staff immensely. But I'll tell you something, over the last several years, I began to love myself well.
Yeah.
And what I've heard a great story from the same author, David Horsarger. He said, organizations don't change, people do. And when we change how we're functioning on the inside and how we see ourselves, and I'm telling you, just like when that day that mayor came to me and said, we want you to be the interim, I said, no way. That's self-doubt creeping in, saying, I have no business doing that job. I'm safe. Well, the most freeing life I'm living now is I'm not living in the safety side. I'm kind of just like, let's go try something new and let's go live. And I take it so serious. And I've done that through a lot of coaching and a lot of mental health exercises. And I'm happy to. I love sharing that story as much as I do the success, because my success is driven by strong mental health.
Love it. Love it. David, thank you for coming on the HaltingWinter Podcast. Thank you for sharing, again, your story, what you've been up to in Republic. I hope that many city leaders will hear this and think personally about their own story and ask themselves, am I living as healthy and as vibrant as I could be? What are the resources that I might be able to invest in? And again, if we can help, go to HaltingWinter.com and let's figure out how we can help you in that. Also, I hope that they create their own values. I'd love that, because I think that people need to be authentically them. Their employees need to be authentically them. And I think in the city world, our cities can flourish and really experience real thriving if we would be more true to ourselves instead of true to the processes and the red tape and the bureaucracy. And then third, I'd love that you're rethinking things differently. You're cleaning the dust off of the governmental playbook and going, is this actually the way to human thriving? So be encouraged by what David's doing, and I hope that empowers you and encourages you in your own journey. Again, thanks for tuning into the HaltingWinter Podcast. We will see you on the streets and in the byways. The stories we share here on the HaltingWinter Podcast are part of something bigger. A movement to remind us where government truly lives. No, not in Washington, D.C., but right here at home, where we live, where we work, and where we play. Because it's in our cities, our counties, and our communities that the real work of democracy happens. And when local government thrives, people thrive. If this conversation inspired you, take a small step that makes a big difference. Subscribe to the podcast, share the episode, and follow along on social media. Every click helps amplify the stories that build pride, purpose, and belonging in local government. To learn more about the HaltingWinter Project and how you can be part of the work that builds belonging, visit HaltingWinter.com. I'm Seth Winterhalter, and until next time, this has been the HaltingWinter Podcast.